I was just talking to the owner of this ugly white work van, and he's super pumped, and so are we, about transforming it. Today we've got it in the shop because we're doing a Weldtec 5-inch kit, some 35-inch tall tires, and some work on the rear diff. This is gonna transform this thing from just a two-wheel drive concierge van to something that is wicked and proud of, and something you can haul the family in style. Let's get started. So we've got the E-Series van up on the rack. I really like this thing. Weldtec actually calls this kit their Baja Grocery Getter 5-inch kit. And this thing is no joke. So if you're looking to have the ultimate van, this thing is the way to do it. Now, of course, this van is two-wheel drive. And talking to the owner, he expressed some interest in swapping to a 4-wheel drive van, but I think that's gonna be a few years down the road. So in the interim, this is an awesome solution. This kit comes with a lot of different components, and I would classify it as a full suspension replacement. It replaces everything underneath here. First, let's talk about these works of art. I would call these the radius arm. And these things are all fabricated and built by Weldtec. There is some welding involved that comes with this kit, and it includes these, wow, that was loud. And it includes these weld-on brackets. Essentially, that bracket gets mounted back along the frame here and is the exact mounting location for this radius arm. The other component of this kit are the I-beams, and you can see we've got these new I-beams installed, and they look really good. Let's go check out some of these old parts because there's a massive difference. So these are all of the front end components all laid out on the floor. Again, these pieces are all replaced with the components in the new Weldtec kit, and they do it for several different reasons. I want to break that down a little bit for you. Of course, coil springs and shocks, pretty simple there. We're going to be doing a much longer shock and a much longer coil spring. That's what's going to give us our lift. Next thing I want to talk about are these radius arms. These things are much, much longer in the new version than compared to these. And these are the brackets that we removed and have to replace with the new weld-on bracket. By using those new arm, it's gonna allow us to make sure that the placement of that front wheel assembly is exactly in the right location in the center of the wheel well, even with a big 5-inch tall spring. Now, when looking at these I-beams, you may say they don't look much different. Well, you're right, but the ones that came from Weldtec are modified so that when at 5 inches of ride height, we're not looking at tires that are cambered in like this because we want the tire to sit nice and flat. So all this whole componentry is gonna work exceptionally well together at precisely 5 inches of lift. Now let's check out what's going on in the back. These new leaf springs on the ground are super huge and very heavy. They provide about 3.5 inches of lift. And as you can see, they've got a lot of plies to them. So they're very progressive leaf pack. That means we're not gonna have really harsh transitions as the suspension articulates, especially when compared to just the 4 leaf springs that are in this suspension right now. So we're gaining better ride quality and we're getting a lift, about 4 inches of lift. This should be about perfect where we want this thing, because right now, I don't know that we measured it, but generally these vans come with the tail a bit high. So hopefully when this thing's on the ground, the ride height is perfectly dialed in. Can't wait to see it happen.
like we're having a good time. That's thanks guys. Cool. Fancy.
Well here, I think you see it.
So we've got the suspension all wrapped up, and now we're digging into this rear axle. Like I said earlier, this thing is two-wheel drive, so we've got one differential that is pushing all the power to the ground. This particular axle is a Dana 60. That's what comes in a lot of these E-Series vans. And because we are upgrading the tire size to a giant 35-inch tall tire, especially when compared to these stock little things, we definitely need to make sure that we get the ratio of drive shaft turns to wheel turns back to stock. And the only way to do that is to regear it. And so we've got a new ring and pinion just getting ready to go in. We've got to take the axle shafts out and of course all the internals inside there. While we're doing that, we are replacing this standard open differential with a limited slip differential. This is a Detroit True Track, and in our opinion is the best limited slip out there for most people. I really like this one because it's got no clutches in it, nothing to wear out, so it's a great option. When we do this, we replace all of the bearings inside the differential, and we've got to be very precise when we put that all together to make sure that this pinion gear is meshing correctly with the ring gear, that it's not too deep and not too tight. And so we work through all that to make sure it's exactly where it needs to be and the setup is perfect. We're going to show you that entire process, but I want to reiterate, the reason that we're doing this is to make sure that the final drive is exactly the same as what it was with the stock tire size on it when compared to these 35s. It's going to be awesome. So we ran into a little bit of a snag with the rear axle. We got it all done, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened to us. Originally, this van is a 350, an E350. And so we thought it is a full float axle before we actually got it in the shop. And so we ordered a full float axle True Track for this thing, only to find out that this is a semi-float C-clip axle, and the True Track will not work with it. So what we ended up doing is ordering a track lock and a thick cut ring gear, and we were able to make it all work with that setup. We've done other vans like this in the past, like a 250, and what we did with those is actually swapped the whole rear axle out for a full float option. So this one's a little bit different. Ultimately, it turned out great. We got the correct gear ratio in there. We've got a good limited slip in there. And we really just have to put tires and wheels back on it. We've got the tires and wheels sitting over here, and they are awesome. We went with Methods. I love this wheel. Let's go check them out here. We've got them installed on the front already. We got all the rest of them there. This is a great looking wheel and tire combo. I really like Method. They do a really great job capturing that off-road West Coast kind of look. And so I really like this particular wheel because it features their bead grip technology. And that is a wheel that has a serrated bead seat. So if you're running your van or four-wheel drive truck at low pressure, it does a great job helping to retain the tire on the wheel. Now that we're talking about tires, this is the Falken AT3W. I really like this tire. It is our #1 selling all-terrain tire by a long shot. It's got this triple mountain peak rating, which means it is an all-star in snow and wet weather. And for really all sorts of terrain, the thing just works extremely well. To fit these tires, we're not exactly sure, but we did some preliminary trimming. We got this lower valence cut right here. But I expect as we get this thing on the ground, aligned and road tested, we may need to do a little bit more trimming here. It all depends on exactly how the alignment goes. Talking about alignments, that's where we're headed next, so let's get it done. I absolutely love how this van turned out. Once we got it on the ground, I was like, geez, this thing is awesome. Dylan, the guy behind the camera, said I need to adopt a few more kids before I could own a van like this, but I absolutely love it. I want to talk about what we did to just finalize the thing. The first thing we want to talk about is calibration. We calibrated it with FORScan, and the only thing that we were able to do is tire pressure. We changed the max tire pressure threshold so that the tire pressure light is not on, and we used a program called FORScan to do that. It worked out really nicely. The calibration on the Speedo, we really didn't need to do anything, and that worked out because we changed the tire size and the gear ratio at the same time. So the Speedo change is only about 1% off, which at 70 miles an hour is like hardly anything. So that worked out really, really well. Last two things to talk about: alignment and cutting. As you can see, these massive meats fit, but we did have to cut a fair amount off of the bumper and the lower plastic valence to make it all happen. We even drilled some new holes to make sure that that valence is secured on there. So the tires fit nicely. The owner of the van actually said he's gonna do a whole different bumper altogether in the future. So I would call this little trim maybe a short-term solution, but I think it actually looks pretty good as it is. The last thing, alignment turned out really awesome. We set the caster a bit high, which is what we like to see, especially on vehicles like this with a big tire. High caster helps the vehicle track in a straight line on its own automatically. To do that, we had to adjust caster by installing some ball joint sleeves. Many Fords have a ball joint sleeve in an eccentric, so we can roll that around exactly where we need it to be. All in all, I love this van. I love how it turned out. I would definitely own this thing, although according to Dylan, I gotta get a few more kids first. So let us know in the comments, what do you think about this van? If you had it, what would you be doing? Make sure you follow us on all of our social platforms because we're on every single one: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Be sure to check in with all of our cool projects. See you on the next one.